microphones are off. I feel like I have to say that because there's always somebody. It's probably be me now that I've said that. And now I'll turn the program over to Martine Downs-Pollard, who will be our moderator. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Angela. Well, good morning. What a wonderful crowd that we have here today. I want to reiterate Angela's comments and say that whether you're considering running for office soon, thinking about it at some point, or just want to find a way to be more engaged, we are glad that you're here and figuring out how you can support or be part of the process. And we have two wonderful panelists here today, both with credentials and experience that can speak well to part one of our Ready to Run series, What Makes a Good Candidate. You should have bios on both of our panelists, but to offer an overview, I'll make some brief introductions. Lucas Hargraves serves as the head of the Markham Group's Public Affairs and Advocacy Shop. Their headquarters are in Little Rock, my hometown. For those of you that know of Lucas, you know he has a great work ethic and strong track record on issues on all levels of government, including the time he served as VP of Policy at the Little Rock Regional Chamber of Commerce. He got his start in politics as an intern for Governor Jim Guy Tucker, President Bill Clinton, and U.S. Senator Dale Bumpers. He brings a great perspective to the work he does and the clients he serves, having a solid background in business and finance. And Lucas, I think I first met you when you were with Merrill Lynch a million years ago. So Lucas knows our state and Northwest Arkansas well, having managed the campaign to pass constitutional issues 2 and 3 during the 2010 general election, and he also represented Walmart in its successful efforts to pass the Main Street Fairness Act in this year's General Assembly. Asa Hutchinson is someone we all know or know of here in Northwest Arkansas, starting his legal career in Bentonville. At the age of 31, he was appointed by President Ronald Reagan as the youngest U.S. attorney in the nation. In 1996, he was elected Congressman of Arkansas's 3rd District, our congressional district here in Northwest Arkansas. After his 3rd term in Congress, President George W. Bush appointed him as Administrator of the DEA. And in 2003, he was confirmed as the first Undersecretary of the newly created Department of Homeland Security. After a long career in law and public service, we are glad that Asa is back in Northwest Arkansas practicing law at the AH Law Group in Rogers. So thank you again for being with us today on an early Wednesday morning. So let's get things started by taking a few minutes and hearing your perspectives on what makes a good candidate. And Congressman Hutchinson, we'll start with you.
Thank you, and I'm delighted to be here. I love these bios when they get to read them because they give you all the highlights. They don't tell you all the valleys that Dave and I would identify with. Anybody who really knows my career know that I've had a few bumps as well. And it's interesting. I think I'll start off with this point that when I got to Congress, I looked around and everybody in Congress virtually had lost a race. You know, it's not a smooth path to get anywhere in politics. You lose, sometimes you lose twice, sometimes you lose 3 times. You know, persistence is something that's important, and you learn yourself and you learn what campaigns are about, and sometimes it takes a little bit longer for some than others. The second thing I would point out is that, in my view, having a long history in politics, having won, having lost, have been in the minority, have struggled, been in Congress in high position, public service is a noble calling. Just please don't underestimate that, and I congratulate you for being here. And we should never diminish or elevate the cynics of life. We should recognize how important that is. And I would probably erase it from any part of my life except the fact that it's very, very important to our future as a country, as a city, as a community. And so it is critically important, and let no one ever diminish that. And I love the quote by Martin Luther. I'm not a Lutheran, I'm a Baptist, but Martin Luther fit for the occasion. And he said this, he talked about it being one of the most noble callings. And of course, you got to think, Martin Luther's a preacher. But he said the very ablest youth should be reserved and educated for not for the office of preaching, but for government. because in government one must exercise reason in the shadowy realms where ambiguity and uncertainty are the order of the day. And today in our society, you know, we've got the left, we've got the right, we've got the media that pick sides and we fight, but really government is about dealing with some very complicated issues that good people disagree on and somehow making it work. So it's incredibly, as Martin Luther said, a noble profession. I would also point out that there's many different entries into politics. You might be here thinking, well, tell me what I need to do to be in a position to run. Well, you could have 100 different starting points and wind up in elected office. You know, in Congress or on the city council, you look at everyone's background and they all come from different paths. There's no magical solution. You know, if you had to pick any ingredient, you probably should be able to say it, whether I've been a farmer or whether I've been a businessman or whether I've been a teacher or whether I've been a mother. You ought to be able to point to some success in life because the public will look at that as a track record and a future indicator as to how you can do. But you can be any different path and get there. In Congress, I served with Steve Largent, former NFL football player. John Lewis was part of the civil rights. He would always talk about he was the one that got beat up when he was with Martin Luther King. Vic Snyder is a doctor. Sonny Bono, I served with Congress and Sonny Bono, of course, is a musician. Pastors, farmers, lawyers, any background can get you there. So don't think there's any magical solution. I'll point out a couple key requirements, and Lucas has got much to say as well. But one thing I would say is that you need, if you're going to run for any office, be able to state why you're running in 30 seconds or less. You've got to pass the Ted Kennedy test. Now, many of you are too young to remember that, but whenever he ran for president, remember what year it was? It was a long time ago. Senator Kennedy ran for president, and he was asked in one of his initial interviews, Senator Kennedy, tell us why you're running for president. And he hem-hawed, and he stumbled, and he could not articulate it, and it destroyed his candidacy. Now, you need to do it for yourself. Why are you running? What motivates you? What's your, as the French say, raison d'être? What is the reason for your candidacy's existence? Is it an issue? Are you issue-oriented and motivated? Education, highway spending, taxes? Is it simply your heart's desire to serve, service, and experience? But you've got to be able to articulate it in 30 seconds. You know, good candidates should be able to get up in 30 seconds, ask for the vote, and tell them why you're running. But you should also be able to expand that to 5 minutes. You should also be able to expand that to 30 minutes. You've got to be flexible and articulate your reasons. Secondly, you've obviously got to look at your job, your personal circumstances, your family circumstances, and see if you're really in a position. Someone said, I'm now in a position to look at running. That's what life's about. It's ebb and flow, and when you're in a position to run. One time in Fort Smith, I recruited a candidate to run for office, and I looked at him, and he was a wonderful family person. He had a beautiful family, but he just didn't tell me the whole story. He announced for office, and then it came out that he had a previous marriage, and he was behind in child support. And he's sitting there thinking, somehow this is not going to come out, whether it's payment of taxes, every issue will come out, and you've got to look at your circumstances, be honest with yourself. People have this image that people actually pay you to run. I've run for, if you look at 3 statewide races that I've run, each one of them took a year out of my life with no income. And you've got to be in a position to be that devoted and financially able to do it. There's a good candidate, you've got to be able to identify your base of support. One consultant asked one time, who really